I want to begin by separating two very different things that so many people, especially atheists and the like, keep collapsing into one. There is methodological skepticism, which is a tool. It's the habit of withholding assent until a claim is earned by evidence that can be checked, criticized, and compared. Then there's performative skepticism, which is a posture. It's the habit of treating disbelief itself as a marker of intelligence, regardless of whether the person disbelieving has actually done the evidential work. I'm defending the first and criticizing the second. And I'll say something very important about this at the end of this video. Hello, my name is Dr. David Pendergrass. I specialize in biblical studies and healthy relationships. At the end of this video, I'm going to give you some great resources I think that will help you. I hope you watch to the end. In real scholarship, history, archaeology, philology, medicine, skepticism is not supposed to be an identity. It's supposed to be a method with consistent questions. What is the evidence? What is the chain of custody? What are the controls? What are the alternatives? What would count as disconfirming evidence? And how strong is the inference? Weak, moderate, strong, given what we already know. Performative skepticism is different. It's a psychological or emotive strategy. Online and among certain scholars, that posture is rewarded, applauded, admired. It gets people clicks and followers. People who are confident, I'm not convinced, and they treat it like a credential, a badge of honor. But I'm not convinced isn't an accomplishment or an argument. It's a report about a psychological state. The only thing that makes it intellectually respectable is the reason for it. And one of the most common ways to hide behind, I'm skeptical all the time and that makes me smart, is to say, like Bart Ehrman does all the time, I'm a critical scholar, or I practice critical biblical scholarship. Well, I received my PhD being trained in critical scholarship too. So I know something about it and I can say something about it in this video. Critical scholarship. People use that phrase like it's a magic wand. They do. Sometimes it means I'm not a fundamentalist, for Bart. Sometimes it means I don't like your conclusions. Sometimes it means I read one Bart Ehrman book and now I have a robe and a gavel. But in the actual history of scholarship, critical is primarily about method and venue. I'm talking about those two things. Method. Critical scholarship tries to make claims that are publicly testable, or at least publicly arguable, using shared tools, philology, textual criticism, epigraphy, archaeology, ancient historiography, sociology of religion, that kind of things that other people can study. The venue. Critical scholarship argues in a forum where your claims can be challenged by other specialists who do not share your commitments. In other words, you don't get to say, my conclusion is guaranteed because my community's authority said so, because Bob said so, because the Pope said so. You have to show your work. That's why critical scholarship is often contrasted with confessional scholarship. Not because confessional scholars never do serious work, but because confessional context can put theological guardrails around conclusions. We see this all the time. A denominational seminary, for example, with a statement of faith, can absolutely produce careful scholarship. But there are also topics where certain conclusions are professionally costly. Even if the evidence points there, you'll get fired if you say that in a commentary. Everyone in training and scholarship knows this. Everybody knows it. We see it all the time in commentaries. If they work at a fundamentalist or a conservative school, I guarantee you, any scholar can. You know exactly what their conclusions are going to be. You can predict them on a wide range of debated issues. Critical scholarship, at least ideally, tries to keep the conclusion side of the issue open and let evidence drive you. Now here's the honest part that people don't typically like to admit. Critical scholarship is not the same thing as pure objectivity. Human beings are not objective. We are located. We have incentives. We have tastes, loyalties, traumas, resentments, ambitions, hopes, fears, and yes, of course, agendas. Sometimes the agenda is crude and simple as I want to win. Sometimes it's as noble, I don't want to hurt people. But nobody is a view from nowhere. You have an agenda. So a better way to say it is this: critical scholarship aims at controlled subjectivity. It tries to discipline bias through checks, peer review, methodological transparency, argumentation that can be scrutinized, evidence that can be re-examined by other people. It does not eliminate bias. It tries to make bias less powerful than the evidence. This is precisely why I will always support critical scholarship. Always. Done well, it leads to honest, authentic conclusions. It treats text and persons in history with so much respect that it allows what they actually believed, regardless of whether it fits into my preconceived biases or preferences or theological systems, to be heard. You don't start with a predetermined lens and then read it. You don't read it, you read it as an ancient person would have heard it, and then you form your beliefs. That's what's supposed to happen, in my view. This connects to a real phenomenon online and in the academy. Skepticism is structurally rewarded, even when it's wrong, because the professional risk is asymmetrical. What I mean is, if you affirm a claim too quickly and it's demonstrated false later, you're labeled credulous, which implies gullible, stupid, dumb. If you doubt a claim and it later turns out to be correct, you just say, I was cautious. I was just cautious. And cautious people are smart. And that's why skepticism becomes the safe default. Sometimes it is appropriate. Sometimes it's an ideology. There are so many people who have such a fragile ego that they are, deep down, terrified of being seen as gullible or stupid by their peers. I see this online all the time. So they think it's noble. What the smart people do is stay in a perpetual state of skepticism and an attitude of, you still haven't convinced me, you still haven't convinced me. If I could condense the whole point to one sentence, it'd probably be this: being difficult to convince is not the same thing as being careful. Carefulness is a discipline. It is evidence handling, method, consistency, and intellectual humility. Difficulty to convince can be nothing more than a social performance, a refusal to engage, or just a prior commitment disguised as rationality. And so often it's just fear. So I'm not asking anyone to stop being skeptical. I am asking people to stop confusing skepticism with scholarship. And that is exactly why I want to give several concrete examples from biblical studies where confident dismissal didn't age well. Once primary data, inscriptions, stratigraphy, coins, administrative titles enter the picture. I'm not claiming archaeology proves Christianity or proves the Bible. Archaeology almost never proves a narrated event, spoken event. What it can do is test claims about names, titles, places, administrative realities, and material culture. And that matters because a great deal of online skepticism, at least on YouTube, operates on that emotional presumption that I don't believe it equals I'm objective and unbiased. That's not critical scholarship. That's just posturing. So here's some evidence. Example 1. Thessaloniki and Luke's Polytarchs. In Acts 17, Luke uses the specific civic title Polytarchos for Thessaloniki's officials. For a long time, the skeptics simply said this was made up. It's a made-up title. Luke is inventing a local title. But a large inscription from Thessaloniki, built into the Vardar Gate area and removed in 1877, it's now in the British Museum, explicitly attests the office of Polytarch. The point is not that Acts 17 is thereby proven. The point is that a confident, dismissive claim, Luke invented the title because it sounds odd, failed when epigraphy was allowed in the conversation. And of course, go to the British Museum. Example 2, Delphi, Claudius, and Gallio in Acts 18. Acts 18:12 calls Gallio the Anthupatos of Achaia. We translate that proconsul. That is administrative language. And administrative language can often be checked. And for a long time, they thought the title was just made up. But at Delphi, at the Temple of Apollo, a set of inscription fragments, part of a letter from the Emperor Claudius, was unearthed early in the 20th century. And one widely reported milestone is the 1905 French excavation work that recovered major fragments, with additional fragments found later. The letter is commonly dated to Claudius's 52 AD context and includes Gallio as proconsul. Again, this does not prove every narrated moment in Acts 18. It does demonstrate that Luke's reference to a named provincial official and his title is not the kind of obvious fiction internet skepticism likes to assume. Example 3. Caesarea Maritima or Caesarea Maritima and Pontius Pilate. The internet posture sometimes drifts into insinuation that even central figures are literary inventions. You'll hear this. The Pontius Pilate is just made up. Not only is he in Christian texts, he appears in Josephus and Tacitus. But there's also a direct inscriptional anchor. In June of 1961, at Caesarea Maritima, near the ancient theater, I've been there, an Italian excavation team under Antonio Frova discovered a reused limestone block with a Latin dedicatory inscription that includes Pilate's name. It's a fragment that says Us Pontius Pilatus, and his office, commonly reconstructed as prefect of Judea, in a context that also references Tiberius. Now, this does not adjudicate theological claims. It doesn't make sweeping posture. It does make the sweeping posture, it's just everyone made it up, sound the way it deserves to be sound, like you're ignorant. Another example, Caiaphas and the pieced forest tomb in Jerusalem. The Gospels place Jesus in conflict with high priestly leadership and a man named Caiaphas. So a constant, lazy, ignorant move is to treat the name figures as dramatic inventions. In November 1990, construction work in Jerusalem's Peace Forest exposed a Second Temple period burial cave. The Israel Antiquities Authority sent archaeologist Zvi Greenhout to excavate. Among the ossuaries, or bone boxes they collected after they had been there for a year in the tomb, was one with an inscription commonly read as Yehoshaphat bar Caiaphas, Joseph son of Caiaphas. Now, archaeology rarely gives you courtroom level certainty that this is the precise individual of the gospel narratives. But it absolutely does place the Caiaphas name in the right time, place, and burial culture, first century Jerusalem. And that's what we see in ossuaries. It makes it irresponsible to be staying constant skeptical that this person was made up. Example 5. This is one I still hear to this day. There's a crucified man, Yohanan at Givat Midvar. One of the most repeated online claims is that crucifixion victims were never buried. Therefore, any burial tradition for Jesus must be fiction. I've heard that the other day. This claim is demonstrably false. In 1968, archaeologist Vasilios Tsafedis excavated a Jerusalem tomb at Givat Midvar and found the remains of a crucified man named Yehohanan, including a nail lodged through the heel bone. This does not prove what happened to Jesus' body. It does eliminate the argument that people keep saying online, that the burial of a crucified man in a Jewish tomb is historically impossible. Impossible is not a scholarly word here. We have evidence of bone in a tomb. Here's another quick example, the House of David, for example. Debates about Dawid, King David, can be sophisticated. The scale of 10th century Israel, the formation of the Samuel traditions, the difference between memory and archive. For a long time, people said David and Israel didn't exist. But David is pure invention. It's just pure skepticism for no reason. In 1993, at Tel Dan in northern Israel, excavations directed by Avraham Beran uncovered fragments of an Aramaic victory stela reused in a wall near a paved area by the gate complex. The primary publication by Abraham Bibaran and Yosef Nabé describes the find in secondary use and the text. The inscription includes the debated but widely discussed sequence, commonly reconstructed as, well, the house is Bet Dawid, House of David. Now, this doesn't prove David's biography, but it does force a more careful claim than the slogan, there's no external reference at all to David. Now, that's enough. We're going for a long, long time, and I think they just proved my point. But here's the practical pastoral point, especially for Christians who spend time online. Do not confuse confidence with competence. A person can sound brilliantly skeptical and still be wrong on the basic data. If someone tells you Luke obviously invented local officials, ask them if they've ever read an epigraphic publication. Ever. If someone tells you John's topography is just symbolic, ask them what they know about Second Temple Jerusalem archaeology. Have they been to Jerusalem? Have they visited the pools? If they respond by calling you an apologist, well, congratulations, you found someone whose skepticism is a personality, not a method. Now, I can only hear a fair objection. Okay, David, but isn't skepticism often justified because Christians have a history of overclaiming? Yes, absolutely. Yes. Christians sometimes do the very thing I'm criticizing, just on the opposite side, especially by Christian apologists, in my experience. They hear about an inscription and then they declare the Bible's proven true. That's not how historical reasoning works. That's how marketing works. That's how you sell books. That's how you get clicks. The honest, mature posture is harder. The inscription strengthens the claim that the author knew something about local administration. It increases plausibility at a certain point. It does not validate every theological inference you want it to draw. Evidence is granular. History is probabilistic. A responsible person updates in small, careful steps. So if you're a Christian listening to skeptics, the goal is not to become more gullible. The goal is to become literate. Learn the difference between a claim about a person existing and a claim about a miracle. Learn the difference between a text being theologically interested and a text being historically worthless. Learn the difference between we can corroborate a name and title and we can confirm a narrated event. Those distinctions are where serious thinking lives. And if you're a skeptic listening to Christians, here's my challenge. Apply your skepticism consistently, including to your own impulses. Ask whether your default no is actually evidential or whether it's just a moral posture. Are you really just scared of being seen as gullible or stupid by people you respect? When skepticism is your default position, it is not intelligence, it's identity protection. It can be a way of saying, if I grant any point at all, the whole worldview I've built might collapse. And whoever they are, they're going to think me dumb. But that's not critical thinking, that's fear. Being hard to convince is not the same thing as being rational. A locked door is also hard to get through. It doesn't make the door a genius. So what should skepticism look like when it's healthy? And it should be healthy. It should be principled. The same standards you use to doubt the Gospels, use on Josephus. The same standards you use to doubt Christian claims, use on your favorite debunking documentary on YouTube. It should be informed. Before you declare something obviously invented, check whether specialists have debated it and what the evidence actually is. Read a book by scholars in the field. And that claim should be revisable. If new data comes in, you update it with humiliation. Well, humility, not humiliation. You can critique bad arguments without treating people like idiots for being persuaded by something you haven't even studied. That's possible. Christians should not be bullied by skeptical tone. Tone is not method. The correct response is not panic and it's not anger. It's a calm question. What evidence are you actually working with? Which inscription? Which excavation? Which text? Which date? Which control? If the person can answer that, They're not doing critical thinking. They're doing status. And Christians should also refuse the opposite error, overclaiming. None of these data points, of course, like I said, prove the Bible true in simplistic sense. Instead, evidence demonstrates only particular data. We historians try to combine various evidences to suggest a probable picture of what occurred. If you want to be taken seriously, whether you're a Christian or skeptic, do what serious people do. Proportion your confidence to the evidence. Name your sources and be revisable when better data arrives. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you'd like to explore Christianity in more in depth like I do in this video, you're going to like these resources that I composed. If you're someone who wrestles with doubt, or you love someone who does, I wrote a book just for you. It's called A Skeptic Challenges a Christian. The whole book is framed as a candid dialogue between a thoughtful skeptic and a Christian. We tackle questions like, does science explain everything? Is belief in God just wishful thinking? Why I believe Jesus was divine and actually rose from the dead? I draw from science, philosophy, history, and personal experience to show why I find Christianity both rational and emotionally satisfying. Now, every single chapter ends with reflection questions you can use for small groups or for your own reflection. If this sounds helpful, you can find A Skeptic Challenges a Christian on my website under books. The link is in the description. If today's video stirred up a hunger to know Jesus more clearly, I'd love to point you to my book, Rediscover Jesus. A lot of Christians would struggle to list even 10 things Jesus actually taught. In this book, I act like a tour guide through the Gospels, using solid historical and biblical scholarship to help you hear Jesus the way his first century Jewish audience would have heard him. And then I'll show you how those teachings apply today. We walk through who God is. Why trust the Gospels? What did Jesus believe about himself? What were the major teachings of Jesus and what did they mean? This is great for new believers or longtime Christians. To grab a copy of Rediscover Jesus, just head to my website, click on books, and the link is in the description. Now, if you're ready to move from just believing in Jesus to actually being formed by him, that's exactly why I created Methodological Discipleship Formation. It's an 8-week workbook designed as a practical training manual for new and growing disciples. It's based in historical context, biblical scholarship, with reflection questions and real-world examples today. We move from know what Jesus taught to do, practice it in real life, and to be formed into the kind of person Jesus wants you to be. We cover the 6 essential habits every disciple of Jesus must know and must practice. If you want a concrete path to grow as a disciple of Jesus, check out Methodological Discipleship Formation on my website under books. The link is in the description. Now, before you click away, I want you to know you don't have to walk through your struggles alone. I offer pastoral counseling and coaching for individuals and couples, drawing on over 20 years of experience in biblical studies and counseling-related work. I regularly walk with people through grief and loss, trauma, anxiety, marriage issues, sin struggles and addictions, faith questions, just general emotional and spiritual burnout. My goal is to provide a safe, compassionate space where you can tell the truth, process what's really going on, and receive practical biblical guidance. They're not clinical therapy, but they're Christ-centered, confidential conversations that aim at clarity, healing, and growth. If you want someone to help walk through whatever you're going through, check out pastoral counseling link in my description, and there you're going to learn about the details and the pricing and how to book a session with me. If you'd like to partner with me in discipleship and help me keep creating resources like these, please consider giving by clicking the donate link in the description below. Your support really does help, and it really does help more people grow as disciples of Jesus. If this was helpful as well, this video, please subscribe to this channel. Click the notification bell and then let someone else know about this video and my ministry. God bless you, and I hope to see you next time.